Okay, welcome everybody to Take Care Out There. This is Keen's brand new limited series where we're taking a deeper dive into some of the global issues that are facing outdoor recreation. My name is Mark Steinbuck. Oh, here's my title card, spared no expense. My name is Mark Steinbuck. I am your host, and I work for Keen on our Keen Effect team, which is our internal corporate responsibility team that helps our brands address the issues of conservation, recreation, natural disaster relief, community building, and the conscious creations of our sustainable products. So this first season that we're hosting here is a 5-episode season, all responding to a new study that was put out by our longtime partner, Leave No Trace, that we have on the line here. And it's really all about how the onset of COVID-19 is changing how people are recreating. Whether it's temporary or permanent, whether it's for the better or for the worse. And so in each episode, what we're going to do is take a deep dive with Ben Lawhon from Leave No Trace, as well as a rotating guest on each episode. With this episode, we have Renee Meyers from Forest Park Conservancy. And we're going to kind of bounce these ideas off of what's happening across the country and also what's happening with these nonprofits that are situated in a place. And we're hoping that we can shine a little bit of light on how this data plays out in their work. So for this episode with Ben and with Renee, we're going to talk about how COVID-19 is impacting urban recreationalists and the role that COVID-19 is playing in keeping people a little bit closer to home. And we're just going to take a pause right there to take a little brand break and introduce to you Consciously Created for a Better Planet. Consciously Created is our brand mantra, and it's really around the idea that there are hundreds of choices that we can make as a brand in how we make a shoe. And we think that each one is a chance to lighten our impact. So if you want to learn more about how we manufacture and the decisions that we make, please check us out at keenfootwear.com/consciously-created for more info. And now we're going to have a word from our sponsor, Keen Footwear, my employer. And we're going to try to get AJ on the phone to introduce a new shoe. It's called the Explorer. AJ, are you there? Hello. AJ didn't show up to work today. All right, I'm going to have to do it myself, guys. Here we go. Here's the new Explorer shoe. And this is really what we call a trail sneaker. It's a kind of an emerging category within the footwear world. It takes you from town to trail, which is very appropriate for today's episode with Forest Park Conservancy, which is one of the largest urban forests in the country. And we've got a lot of really good reviews on the Explorer here, and I'd like to show one to you. This is an actual quote that we got from the internet, and it says, "I would recommend this outstanding comfort of a shoe," from Mayfield. Possibly Curtis Mayfield, not sure. More to come on that. So the Explorer is what we call a hiker sneaker or a trail sneaker. And really comfort and trail usage is its primary objective, to get you from A to B in comfort. And it's got a lot of trail cred. I own this one myself, and so does my wife. It's actually our go-to shoe, especially for conditions where we need some waterproof lining. So check this one out at keenfootwear.com. And back to me, because I'm the only one here. All right, so now that we're done with a little bit of that brand, we're going to jump over to Ben Lawhon with Leave No Trace. Here's your introductory card, Ben. Bum, ba, bum. And we're going to talk to you about some of the findings in Leave No Trace's new study and a little bit about what you do. So Ben, thanks for being here with us. And would you want to just start by telling our audience a little bit about what Leave No Trace does and how we're partnering together? And you're on mute.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. First, I just want to thank Keen for your longstanding support of Leave No Trace. We couldn't do what we do without great partners like Keen, and we certainly helped us accomplish so many things over the years. So big thanks to Keen. Leave No Trace, we are dedicated to teaching people how to enjoy the outdoors responsibly. We provide outreach, education, training, and research, and we give people tools to make good decisions about leaving places as good or better than they found them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I believe we've been partners together since about 2005. So we got or
Correct.
2006, I want to say. So we got a really good long history working together to protect these places and put in management plans in the hottest spots across the country for this.
Correct.
So,
Yes.
so my understanding is that Leave No Trace has put out a new survey talking about recreation impacts in the world of COVID. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we at Leave No Trace have had a long-standing 25-year partnership with the federal land management agencies in the U.S., so National Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Forest Service, as well as many state and local and municipal agencies. And while we're continually doing research looking at the impacts from recreation in the outdoors and how they can be minimized and mitigated, we're also looking at the social science in terms of people's attitudes about outdoor recreation and impacts and how they can take care of the outdoors. And in that vein, once the COVID pandemic started, we began to really see and hear from our land management partners some significant changes in the way people were spending time in the outdoors. And so we wanted to do a rapid assessment of how the pandemic is changing recreation patterns. What did recreation look like pre-COVID? So before March 11th, when the World Health Organization designated the pandemic, what does it look like during this pandemic? And what might we be able to forecast in terms of when states begin to reopen and shelter-in-place orders are lifted? And so the research is comprised of 3 phases. We just completed phase 2, and we were looking at more of a longitudinal model over a 9-week period just to see how things are changing over time. And so that's really led us to some really interesting findings for both outdoor enthusiasts themselves, but also for potentially the land management community to help them better understand what's coming and what they can anticipate in terms of visitation.
Awesome, thanks, Ben. That's some really useful research, and I've been pouring through these. These are really easy to find and really easy to understand because Leave No Trace has arranged them in a very graphic kind of format. So anybody who's not into reading the social science journals, you still have a lot of stuff to learn here in a really easy, digestible model. And Ben, I wanted to just kind of dive into a few of these points really quick with you. The 4th finding in phase 1 is that urban residents are most impacted. Can you explain to me a little bit more about why that is and what that means?
Sure. When we look at and ask people who participated in this survey, and I should mention that we work with one of our primary research partners, Penn State University, on this. And so we had over 1,000 respondents in the phase 1 of this study. And when we ask individuals where they live, urban clusters, suburban, rural, what we saw in terms of the data is that urban residents are most impacted in terms of the amount of time they're getting outside and their opportunities to recreate. When you've got shelter-in-place orders and you've got closures in an urban space, those populations in cities and urban clusters have really been impacted the most in terms of just the opportunities they have to get out, whereas people that live in more rural areas still have those opportunities to get outside for the physical and mental health benefits from recreation. So we've definitely seen, at least in the early phases of the pandemic and the lockdown, where urban residents just had less access to the outdoors. And that was a really interesting finding for us.
Yeah, being in Portland myself, I've definitely experienced that. And I'm sure a lot of us across the country have, since over 50% of Americans are urban now.
Right.
So I also want to talk about the second finding within that phase 1 study, which is that recreationists are staying closer to home.
Right. And that was another interesting finding. So prior to the March 11th World Health Organization designation of the pandemic, only about 11% of our survey respondents indicated that they only traveled 2 miles or less from their home to recreate. So about 10% of the sample said we stick within 2 miles of home. Post March 11th, so once we're in this designated pandemic stage, nearly half of the respondents indicated that they are staying closer to home. So about 49% of the respondents said, now we're staying within 2 miles. So to go from 10% to 50% is a big jump in terms of the proximity in terms of home and recreation. And that's leading to some big changes and a lot of pressure in a lot of areas, because previously these people would go much further afield, so to speak. But there's also a silver lining there where people are starting to discover these great recreational opportunities they have close to home. And so it's how we really effectively manage that increase in terms of making sure people are informed about ways to minimize their impact, pick up after their pets, stick to trails, be prepared, all those kinds of concepts.
All right, I bet Renee is nodding at every single thing that she's hearing here. But before we jump to Renee, I just want to take a little water cooler break with you, since I didn't put this in here earlier. Ben, you have kids at home, is that right?
I do.
So do I, and I know Renee does also. So that kind of unites us. And I want to know what's awesome on TV that your kids are watching.
Oh boy, I hate to be that curmudgeon, but we have really tried to limit the screen time because my eighth grader has figured out how to accomplish an entire week's worth of schoolwork in a day and a half. So there's 5.5 more days that we have to figure out what to do now. And so screens have been sort of, I won't say the bane of our existence, but it's another thing to manage. So we've really been trying to do more things like outside, like we've got a slack line in the backyard and it's like, okay, drop the phone, get outside. So we've been trying to minimize the screen time at our house, which isn't just an ongoing challenge. If I'm being
Well, you're
perfectly
shaming
honest.
me, Ben. You're shaming me on the internet.
I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best.
Well, I'm going to send a shout out to my favorite YouTube video that my kids are loving right now, because like myself, when my kids can't get out all the time, there is still something to be learned through television, believe it or not. And my favorite show that they're watching nearly every day, shameful, is Dr. Binocs, which is a really cool science program that's produced out of India, where a floating cloud of dust with a mustache with gloves on the end teaches kids everything from natural disasters to how coronavirus works to what boogers are. So really cool stuff. And my kid wants to grow up to learn about how things fall into black holes now. So I think that's super cool. Renee, I'm going to jump over to you, and same question. I think you also have some teenagers or almost teenagers in your house. So what's going on the screens?
Yeah, elementary, middle, and high school.
All of them. Okay.
All of them, and they're watching very different things. Again, kind of like Ben, we try to limit them. With my oldest teenager, that doesn't always work very well. But I think the one thing I've been pushing isn't necessarily a TV show or Netflix or documentary, but we have been doing a lot of Duolingo, which is an app to learn language. And so both my girls have been learning and increasing their knowledge in Spanish, and I have been doing German because I used to be bilingual and very fluent in German. So it's been fun to kind of catch up and check it out. So yeah, we're kind of doing the language thing right now.
Fantastic. I got through a week of Irish on there.
Nice.
And then I gave up.
It gets really competitive, you got to keep up your streaks, and you know how many coins do you get from how many hours you put in. So I'm a little competitive, so it's been kind of fun.
Absolutely. And so Renee, I also know that in your former life, or currently still, you're a biologist. So I think biology is kind of competing as one of the top stories in the news right now with the murder hornets, and I want to know, what's your thoughts on the murder hornets?
Oh, see, I was a hydrologist.
Oh, never mind. Okay.
No, not the biology. I'm the water, not the animals.
Oh, sorry, I got that wrong. Well, I'm sure that there's a lot of biology that you have to intersect with in Forest Park. So let's get to that. So you are the executive director for the Forest Park Conservancy, based here in Portland. Do you want to let our audience know a little bit about what Forest Park is and what you all are doing there?
Sure. Forest Park is 5,200 acres, has over 80 miles of trail, and it's really the largest urban park in the country. There are a lot of large urban parks, but most of them have hardscapes, whether it's tennis courts, soccer fields. Forest Park is 5,200 acres of urban forest. It's very unique. There's nothing like it in the country. The Forest Park Conservancy is a community-supported nonprofit. Basically, our mission is to work side by side with Portland Parks and Recreation to ensure that those 80 miles of trail are well maintained and safe for all different kinds of users and to help restore the ecological health of the park to make sure that it's there for future generations.
Fantastic. And Keene and Forest Park Conservancy have been partners for quite a long time.
Almost 15 years. It's been a
15 years.
long time.
Wow. Well, that's good to hear.
Yes.
Okay, so now that we're in this very new scenario that Ben was updating us on, Forest Park obviously isn't the only park that's feeling this across the country, but I think it's maybe the best example since it is this basically kind of wilderness trail system within a city. And other parks across the country are, probably smaller parks with even bigger populations, so they're maybe feeling it even more. How do you think recreation behaviors have changed in Forest Park?
Over the past 2 months, they've actually changed a lot. When a lot of our local state forests, national parks started closing down, Forest Park has been seeing unprecedented uses. There are more and more people that have used Forest Park than ever before. And a lot of folks, obviously, because there was nowhere to go, are using Forest Park for the first time, which in a positive light is awesome because, they're learning more about what Forest Park is, the importance of it, and about the Forest Park Conservancy. But there has been a lot of pressure on the trails and the trailheads. And because Forest Park, most of those 80 miles of trail, basically almost half of them are single track, soft track trails. It's really hard to be able to create that social distance that is needed to be safe on the trails. And basically what that means is you have to step off trail in order to create that safe space, which means that you are impacting wildlife and native plant habitat as well.
Yeah, and that actually kind of ties directly to the next question I was thinking is Forest Park Conservancy is heavily involved in the routine maintenance of Forest Park. And when people step off the trail, obviously it creates a maintenance problem because it's degrading the landscape. How is the maintenance routine keeping up during this time?
What maintenance routine? That's the thing is, as an organization, we chose to in order to keep our staff safe, we have not been out maintaining the trails in the park for the past 6 weeks. And so right now there's a huge backlog in maintenance. Normally this is the time of year when we're out starting some major trail projects and also starting to do brushing, because in the springtime, all of the native vegetation loves to come out. So one of the things that we do this time of year is cut back a lot of the vegetation. And so we are about 6 weeks behind in our trail maintenance right now. And we don't have any plans in the next few weeks to get out there. So we're hoping that once we are able to get out, that we are so lucky to have an enormous amount of volunteers that love Forest Park that will be able to help us catch up on that maintenance. But yeah, it's not just about stepping off trail too, but when you think about the impact just to individual trailheads, because there has been so much use, and then the trails themselves, there's been a lot more impact that we're gonna have to catch up on.
I think a lot of people don't realize that. And in a lot of people's minds, there's just less people out and they think that their impact is lower because they're not in a group, but they also don't realize that there's a lot of behind the scenes going on that keeps their recreational experience possible. And if that can't happen right now, then their impacts are actually greater. So it's kind of good to lift the veil off of that process a little bit through this. So you were mentioning, maybe how you're going to plan into the near future. What's summertime looking like?
Yeah, we actually have a lot of great things coming up. So one of the things that we have been doing is normally this time of year, we have already launched our volunteer ambassador program in Forest Park, and our volunteer ambassadors table at several of the popular trailheads. We have roaming ambassadors that roam some of the popular trails in the park. And really what their job is to do is to promote responsible recreation. They teach Leave No Trace. They educate folks on the natural and cultural history of Forest Park. And that was a wonderful program last year that also collects a lot of data for people, actually how many people are visiting the park, how many people have off-leash dogs, how many people are utilizing their Leave No Trace principles. And so we have actually created an online training through a webinar, which will launch at the end of May. So we have had, in that as well, unprecedented numbers of people sign up for our ambassador training, which is awesome. So we're really excited about that. We have a training at the end of May and one at the beginning of June, so that by the time we are able to get back in the park, we hope to have over 60 to 75 ambassadors trained for that program, which is amazing. We're super excited. We're also doing a bilingual training. So we're doing one in Spanish as well in partnership with Vive Northwest. So yeah, really excited about that. And thank you to Keen, who is a major sponsor of that program, which is awesome. This is our second year in partnership for that program. And then also our Discovery Hikes program. We normally have a lot of people that love to come out with us and, like I was saying, learn about the cultural and natural history. So we are lining up all our hikes to get ready to go out, but we're also producing virtual hikes for those who necessarily can't get out to the park or may have physical limitations as well. And so this gives them an opportunity to learn more about the park and right from their own home. So in addition to that, we are starting to kind of strategize about how we will get out into the park and what that looks like. We have a lot of volunteers that are just really, really want to get out into the park. And so we're trying to figure out what those volunteer work parties look like, how we can do it safely, protect staff, protect volunteers, but also really start, taking care of the park and maintaining it at the level that it needs to be maintained.
Awesome. Thanks, Renee. So one last parting question for you is, what used to have less value that now feels truly valuable? Answer any way you want to.
Less value, but more valuable. I guess I never really, sometimes when we're at work or we're at home and we're super, super busy, we kind of go from one thing to the next and we feel like we're always on a deadline, or we got to get kids to this sport and that sport, and you're running here to there every single night. And I guess for the longest time, I just thought that was kind of my job, and that's what we do as parents. That's what we do as employees, and that has totally changed for me. Not having my children in sports every day, not being at the office, it's really changed my perspective on the importance of being that busy. And we lose so much perspective as a person and human being on life and our connections to our family and connections to our coworkers. And so I have really enjoyed not being that busy and spending more incredibly valuable time with my partner and my children, which has been awesome. Going on hikes, or just my kids are learning how to communicate with each other in a way that they've never had to before, because they're in each other's space all the time, and there's 3 of them. So I've really enjoyed that. That's been really super special to me.
Oh, that sounds good. I think I've learned a little bit from what you just said. Renee, just for the audience, where can people learn more about Forest Park Conservancy?
forestparkconservancy.org.
Okay. And Ben, where could people learn a little bit more about Leave No Trace and this new study?
People can visit lnt.org, click on research, and you will find the COVID information, both the infographics as well as reports from each phase if you're interested in a little more information.
All right, fantastic. That pretty much wraps this up, folks. I just want to send a shout out to all the other episodes that are out there. There's 4 other episodes featuring other Keen core partners in the nonprofit space, including the Oregon Natural Deserts Association, Outdoor Afro, the Conservation Alliance, American Whitewater, and here we have Forest Park Conservancy. So it's been a pleasure to speak with you all today, and just wanted to end on a little bit of a brand plug. Consciously constructed for a better planet. This is Keen's Ethic of Making Shoes, because we know that there are hundreds of choices that go into making a shoe, and each one is a chance to lighten our impact. So don't forget to check us out at keenfootwear.com/consciously-created for more info. And thanks so much, everybody, for checking this out. Very much appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. Take care.